Wes du har, min friend, and welcome to yet another video. 'Tis time for yet another episode of The Lord of the Rings, the books versus the movies, in which I look at slight or bigger changes that were made in the films by Peter Jackson, as opposed to the books by John Ronald Reuel Tolkien. And for this episode, I have chosen to talk about Andúril, the famous sword of Aragorn II Elessar, because who doesn't like swords, right? The history of the sword in question is long and rich indeed, and dates back as far as the First Age, when the sword Narsil was forged by the dwarven smith Telchar of Nogrod, along with Angrist, a knife that was used to cut one of the Silmarils from Morgoth's crown. The name Narsil, then, in Quenya means white flame, and after it was most likely taken to Númenor, we do not know much about it until it was wielded by King Elendil, who used it in the Battle of the Last Alliance, during which it was broken and used by Elendil's son Isildur to cut the One Ring off from Sauron's hand. After Isildur's death during the Battle of the Gladden Fields, it was taken by the king's squire Ohtar to Imladris, and then the shards were passed from father to son as an heirloom to the throne of Gondor until they were passed to Aragorn. The first time we encounter the shards in the book was at the beginning of the Fellowship of the Ring, when Aragorn meets the hobbits. After the Council of Elrond, Aragorn got the sword reforged and named it Andúril, the Flame of the West. In Lorien, Galadriel and Celeborn presented Aragorn with a gift in form of an enchanted elvish scabbard engraved with runes. The enchantment should have prevented the sword that was drawn from it from being broken in battle. The hero then used the sword until the end of the story. An interesting piece of information can be found in the Two Towers, where Aragorn has to lay down the sword temporarily in order to be able to enter Meduseld, the hall of King Theoden. He is not overly excited about this, and in fact says that death would come to any man except himself who drew it from its scabbard. However, those who have seen the films might remember the events a little bit differently. Yes, we see Narsil being wielded by Elendil during the Battle of the Last Alliance, and then used by Isildur the same way he did in the book, but then the next time we see the shards is in Imladris, Rivendell, where they are being inspected by Boromir, who accidentally cut his finger with a blade that was still sharp after so many years. Narsil hasn't been reforged into Andúril until the return of the king, where it was given to Aragorn by Elrond when the hero and the Rohirrim army were camped at Dunharrow, so he could summon the army of the dead and win the Battle of the Pelennor Fields. Although I consider myself to be a Tolkien purist and will always prefer the books above all, I have to admit that this particular change fits the movies perfectly, as it provides the viewer not only with the dramatic scene in the Rohirrim tent, but also helps the viewer to see a gradual transformation of Aragorn from a ranger to a true heir to the throne of Gondor. What do you think about these changes? Do you like them? Would you stay more faithful to the book, or would you have done it completely differently? Let me know in the comments down below, my friends. And that will be all for today. Thank you very much for watching, and as always, Namarie.